And while people are filling out that fast check-in survey, the first 2 or 3 slides here, I'm pointing them out so that you can access them later as a resource, because we did a session in October about breakout sessions. So what we're doing today is more about the things you can do with breakout sessions. So if you find yourself feeling a little bit lost and need to know more about the basics of breakout sessions, you can come back to the Webex breakout sessions recording from last October. There are a couple of really useful slides in there. One of them was from the host and co-host viewpoint. Here's some useful things that you can do. And from the participants' viewpoint, here are some useful things that you can do. So those couple of slides are really just resource slides for you. If you had the slides from last October when we did this, then you've seen these already.
And we'll just give you a minute to finish up that Google form ticket in. Active learning, it's been a new venture, just seeing what it looks like in the live online classroom. So hopefully you get some tips and tricks today. It's been really interesting, all the things that you need to navigate. Like before every session, Mary and I are saying, okay, let's make a list of all the things we post in the chat and a list of all the screens that we want to open. So the layers of complexity are certainly fun. So we'll just have to give a thumbs up, the little reaction, the smiley face in the bottom when you are done with the survey
questions.
And I can see we've got 4 responses submitted already.
I'm actually going to go to the next slide. Oh, maybe before I do that, and while you guys are wrapping up those questions, just a couple of tips for today, because we are going to have you do 3 different activities. So we'll have 3 times today where we send you to breakout sessions. If you are in a breakout session and you want to ask for help, remember, keep your participant panel open inside your breakout session. So it's something that you may not usually use in a WebEx meeting, but if you open that up, it does 2 things for you. In the participant panel, there's a link for you to click that says ask for help, and Jen or I can come in from the general meeting space into your session to help you. And the other thing that it does is it has a timer. So I think everything that we are going to do today, we're going to keep you on the clock so we can keep things moving, and you'll be able to see the clock counting down to see how much time you have left in your activity.
Since today is all about active learning, we want to get you in sessions, breakout sessions right away. So the first thing we're going to do is put you in a breakout session and have you share with your colleagues what is something you already know about active learning and what is something you want to know about active learning. Now for this activity, it's discussion only. You have 5 minutes total and everyone in the group needs to share. So those are the only guidelines you need. Introduce yourselves and go ahead and get started.
And I'm actually going to stop sharing for a second so that I can create your groups. I was really waiting for people to come in. We have 9 participants, so we're going to put you in 3 groups of 3. And I'm doing this automatically. So if you haven't done this before, it takes very little time. Everybody's got a group. You should be getting a message that says what group you're in. I'm going to start the breakout sessions and pull you out in 5 minutes.
Welcome back, everyone. One of the great tips is to have a sharing slide from breakouts that reminds students as they come back into the room, and it reminds you that you want to have that opportunity to share whole group. A lot of times when I was in the classroom, I'd say small group and then some share out from whole group. The goal of small group is gives everybody the opportunity to speak, and then whole group you get to hear like a random sample from all. So I'm going to call on someone from group 1 to just share an idea or a thought or something that came out of your group. If you want to unmute and turn your video on and share, that would be great.
I don't know what group I was in.
You were in one. Perfect.
I was going to say, I don't know. I don't know the answer. We talked about, when they go off in groups, well, to come back and do some, a reflection, or if it's a big project, maybe reflect on, did everyone participate? So you make sure that people don't get in the groups and not participate.
We're going to talk about that today because that can be a challenge. Just like when we assign group work in the classroom, there's a student or 2 that just does not engage or participate.
Keeping them accountable is always a hard part.
Someone from group 2 share? Thanks, Andrea.
Those are groups.
You guys are killing me.
Okay, we'll just have anybody else who's willing to share.
This is also, think about the stuff that's slowing us down here a little bit, because we did this on purpose. We didn't provide as much guidance as we normally would. So we'll be talking about guidelines as we move along today. So somebody from a group that wasn't Andrea's.
Kelsey, would you share?
Sure. We kind of talked about accountability as well and finding it difficult to sort of monitor sometimes. Kathy discussed using a common worksheet for students to have something to show after the breakout session. And I'm kind of new, so I haven't used breakouts as an instructor yet. I've only just participated in groups, so I'm absorbing it all.
Well, the session from back in October may be useful for you then, because we actually recorded it from 3 different angles. So it shows you the instructor side and it shows you what's going on with the student side. Because unfortunately, the breakout rooms don't record. If you are recording your Webex session, it just records what the general room is seeing, not the breakout rooms.
And you're going to have that awkward pausing when students come back. And so think about, how do you want to address that? Do you want to call on individuals? Do you want to have them identify beforehand? So all this is some good stuff. We want to go to our next slide, which is the first type of breakout activities, our basic prompt activities. This is the lowest level, super low stakes, where all individuals enter a small group breakout room and collectively respond to a prompt or a problem. And that's exactly what you guys did. It can be on the fly for an instructor, very low prep. You can give a verbal question or you can post a prompt in the chat. It typically is a low time investment for students. They're just in there quick to have a discussion, get that time going. The key is pacing and time so that it's not too long to discuss and they run out of things, as long as they're focused on the topic. This is a great place to start, and we've got several different ways you can do this. The key is keeping it to just 3 or 4 students.
And you can do this asynchronously. We've tried with each of these structures that we're going to look at today to show the different modalities. So you can, of course, do this kind of basic prompt at your tables in a physical classroom with small groups, or breakouts as you just did, or small group discussion boards like we had for a lot of the base camp.
The key is clarity, and how do you share the prompt? If it's a short or small prompt, you can just verbally say it, or you can post it in the chat, or you can have a slide up. You can share that prompt before you launch the group so they know what they're supposed to be focusing on. The last thing you want, just like when you're in the classroom, is to students get in that room and say, what are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
What were we supposed to talk about? Or nobody talks about anything.
Yeah, you don't want them burning that valuable synchronous time.
Absolutely. So it's really important that they know what the prompt is, and then expectations. Are they just going to discuss it like you guys did in the last session? Are they going to record their responses on a worksheet? Are they completing a task? Are they turning anything in? Are they submitting an artifact? So those are some things for the instructor and that you really want to think through. How do you share that prompt, and how are you crystal clear about what they're supposed to do and what they're responsible for? This is one of the first ones that we just did, the KWL chart.
And this is just a specific type of activity that's under that larger umbrella of the basic prompt. So you guys did a basic prompt that is the K and W of the KWL.
Originally, this was created to be used when you're going through a lesson. Our students are going through reading. They start with, what do you already know about the topic? What do you want to know? And they keep track of the learning throughout the lesson or at the end. We just used the K and W piece as a ticket in. And certainly if there was time at the end of your lesson, you could put students in another breakout room to discuss what they learned. That's a great way to review key content. Just share what was the biggest idea or what was the biggest point of learning from your lesson. On the right-hand side, we've got some images there. One is a KWL chart that you can use. If you click on that, you'll get the slides at the end of today. It's just downloadable. And the other one is the ticket in that we use today. It's a little bit more generic, but you could use that with students as well.
So they're not just pretty images. They are linked to actual resources for you to take away later. And then there's a whole bunch of these basic prompt types of activities out there.
Remember, the purpose for this is to be easy for you as an instructor. There's a lag in session or you feel like students aren't following along. Put them in a breakout room and have them do a discussion prompt or reflection question. Some of you might remember from base camp, we did a naughty problem where a student says, here's a challenge I'm having with an assignment or with a reading, and students have the opportunity to brainstorm. They could just do basic problem solving, a 3-2-1, and you can switch these up to anything, 3 things they've learned, 2 examples, an idea. TQE is a popular method for students to capture or reflect on some of their thoughts, their questions, and epiphanies. Rosebud Thorn, we also did that in base camp. A pro and con grid where you give them a topic and they share pros and cons.
Or if you're an economist, I have a ton of graphic organizers that are cost-benefit grids. So basically the same thing.
A roundtable discussion. Think about the times when you're in a classroom and students you've given them a lot of content and you want them to chew on it a little bit. It's the same thing with breakout rooms. Give them a discussion question, or at the end of the day, a review, or even something like a post-it parade. All low stakes, pretty easy activities that you can put them in breakout rooms and have them do together and give them an opportunity to actively engage with the content. Okay, we have another prompt activity. This time we're going to raise the stakes a little bit. We certainly want you to discuss like last time, but the guidelines for this are you're going to discuss and also complete a Google Sheet. So I just posted in the chat. If you copy that and paste it in the browser, you are going to go to a Google slide. Group 1, go to slide 1. Group 2, go to slide 2. Group 3, go to slide 3. The odd number groups are going to create group guidelines. So we just talked about what are the guidelines and rules that when students are in group discussions? We want you to brainstorm a list of those. And prompt 2 is determine roles and responsibilities for groups. So would you assign roles to students? And if so, what would those roles be? And what would you have them responsible for? So we're going to have you go ahead and click on the link in the chat, and you should go to a Google slide presentation. We're going to randomly group you again. Are they in the same groups, Mary, this time? Or new groups?
You are in the same groups because it's faster. That's why. And Julie was working with someone and had to come in a little bit late. So let me put you in a session. And I'm going to start. You have a 5-minute limit. So make sure again that you pace yourselves. Does everybody have access to those slides? Did you find them? Because you're going to record what it is that you're doing on those Google slides. So thumbs up.
Discuss.
Okay.
Mary, it says view only when I go to it.
Good thing I checked.
Yeah.
I figured that was probably another good practice tip for you guys. It's make sure that the students actually have the things in their hands. Because, in a physical classroom, I can go around and hand them the piece of paper and see that they all have it. All right, I'm going to start the breakout sessions, and you only have 5 minutes. So this time, last time, if you were watching the clock, it counted up, and I just kept an eye on the watch and brought you out at 5 minutes. This one, I put the settings to automatically end. All right, I'm hitting start. Okay, people are coming back.
Welcome back. So that was super fast, a quick sim. When you're wanting students to discuss and record some of that feedback, typically you want to give them a little bit more time. And again, it's just a level up as just plain discussion. So we have group 1 slide up here. And would you share, someone from the group who hasn't shared yet, share some of the group guidelines for breakouts that your team came up with?
Well, we were just kind of brainstorming as we were flying down through this, but with no particular order. We probably would have organized them maybe a little bit differently. But one, obviously be respectful. And I put a colon there because we were going to go back and kind of talk about what that looked like and what that is. And maybe that's just the whole thing is it acts as a prompt for us to talk about what being respectful is during breakouts. Let everyone have a voice, actively participate. And that's a whole nother example of how is that active participation happening. Stay on task, be ready to report out. Consider your role and fill what is missing. We're talking about who's keeping track of time. Be respectful of that. And if you see something that's not happening, asking people for their opinion. If you see somebody that's getting left out, how do you pull them into the conversation? Utilize terms, concepts, and examples connected to the course. But we always like that. We want them to show that learning and demonstrate that learning. Have fun with learning. I think that was a big piece there too, is that if they come into it with the right attitude, they're going to come out with it with so much more. And then offer constructive and or positive feedback to your peers.
I love that. And I think it's so important that we set up these guidelines because students don't necessarily know how to act in small groups in our classroom, let alone in small groups online in breakout sessions. So clarifying some of those guidelines are so important. We're going to pop to slide 3 because they also had the same topic. And would someone from slide 3 be willing to share, or group 3 be willing to share?
Look at Juliet, all fancy, putting in links to more resources.
So we structured ours, I think we were more thinking about group guidelines in terms of the guidelines for
Yes.
teachers setting students into breakout groups, but structuring groups in terms of no more than 4 so that they stay relatively small. Clear rules about specific tasks and guidelines that they need to complete. Time frame, we really liked the countdown versus count up clock because it meant that students could keep an eye on their own time and have an idea of, okay, we're coming back at this time versus, did she say 10 minutes or 5 minutes? Explicit behavior guidelines, netiquette essentially for breakout groups. We were talking about if you're having a discussion, especially if the teacher's not in the room, to make sure you're keeping it civil and respectful, especially if you're talking about things that might be contentious issues. And then display guidelines, some way to show yourself, whether if you're comfortable showing your video or have a personalized icon. And then we started talking about how to hide your self view. But it would be nice to have some way so it's not just a gray blank screen, but something that actually shows students themselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we were talking about before anybody showed up today that a checklist for the instructor is a really nice thing to have because it's so easy to forget stuff. So I myself am a fan of bulleted lists and checklists. So I would love something like this before I was starting my session to make sure that I had everything, all my ducks in a row. And I'm going to jump to slide 2 because their topic was the one that was different.
And their goal was to come up with some group roles. Do you assign roles? And if so, what are those responsibilities? So would someone from group 2 share, please?
I can do it. We figured we have a moderator, somebody who would keep the discussion going, and maybe that could be the spokesperson that would bring the information back to the entire class. A presenter would be maybe each person who would share their screen because they're working on different things. And the recorder might be somebody who would be typing the information into maybe a Google Doc, and you might need a timekeeper, but it just kind of depends. Gee, we don't have this done and we've got 2 minutes left, we better get something on paper.
Well, and think about with both of the activities that we've done so far, we didn't give explicit roles. And so when we came back and just said, hey, can somebody from your group share, there's that silent hemming and hawing while you try to figure out, is somebody else going to do it? Do I have to do it? So assigning that role ahead of time would actually minimize that lag time, which, all time is valuable when you're there with the students in the moment. I am going to...
We were also debating about the timekeeper role, and I don't know if you saw what I put in the chat, but this is what happened to me and why I would say that maybe a timekeeper role would be valuable, because we were all over in Google Slides because we weren't sharing our screen to watch what one person did. So we were all over in Google Slides, and I was in the middle of saying something, and the next thing I know, we were back in the thing, and Mary was greeting us, and I was like, "Hi, Mary," and because I thought you joined our group, I didn't know we were done.
Suddenly, there you were.
We think it's really important to set those guidelines. And, sometimes even having students create those guidelines can be great. Here's some simplistic ones, and that's Mary dancing. And yes, that's exactly what she does look like.
That looks like that too. She has the same Bitmoji.
We did a little breakout activity at an adjunct orientation CTLA did, and we just came up with some of these real simplistic breakout rooms. But this slide is at the end of the slide templates if you want to take something like this and modify it. But you guys came up with a lot of these already. I think when there's guidelines, that kind of sets the pace or the stage for what you expect to happen within those breakout sessions, because it's a lot harder to jump from room to room than it is to walk from table to table.
Yeah.
And you don't really see what's going on in each section like when you're in the classroom. So setting those guidelines is really important. These are just some examples.
And if you haven't used breakout sessions, it's really important because in the classroom, you can see who's answering questions and go answer it. In Webex, if I leave the lobby and come answer one of your questions in your breakout, I don't have a partner to stay in the lobby. If a new student comes in, they're just sitting there in that general room and not getting put into a section, because either the host or the co-host has to be someone who puts them into one of the breakout rooms. So you really need somebody to stay in that general area the whole time, which means you don't get to oversee groups a lot unless you find a volunteer or have a partner. If you're team teaching, doing a learning community, then you have that luxury.
This is just a template. Again, we just brainstormed a little bit and played around with it. Some of you might want to call it jobs or roles or responsibilities, but we just played around with some of the potential roles. Again, you could call it the manager or the leader or the director or organizer. And if you knew the breakout groups ahead of time, you could identify who would be in each of those roles. That might take a little bit of time. It's one of those classroom management logistic kinds of things. Not sure if you have time for. If not, I would suggest if you don't have time, certainly students could self-identify, or even if you designated a leader for each group, that top line, you could say, I've designated a leader for each group, and when you get in your breakout sessions, determine who will be each of the other roles. So it's just one of the ways to make sure that students are in that breakout session with an accountability piece.
And Julia, I saw, had a couple of ideas here in the chat, and one of them says, well, what if you just said in alphabetical order, these are your roles? Or have them count off in the group if there's 4 roles, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then say, okay, role 1 is this, role 2 is this. I tend to do things in my class because I don't want them saying it's not fair if I've selected the roles. So I'll say, okay, your leader is the person whose birthday is closest to today. And then your timekeeper is the person who has to drive the farthest to campus. Of course, right now that doesn't work very well. But stuff like that, where it's clear that I'm not picking on the same person all the time.
And it gives them a little opportunity for discussion. So again, how you define those, but I think it really gives structure to the breakout sessions when they're going in with, okay, my role is the timekeeper. It holds them accountable for everybody participating or engaging during that session. Next, we want to talk about, this one's a little bit more advanced technique, and I wouldn't necessarily start with this, but it takes a little bit more preparation time and for you to think through things. It takes a little bit more time for the students to engage in. It's a minimum of a 20-minute activity. You're still going to work in groups of 3 to 4 students. And the whole purpose of this is you're creating a gallery walk, kind of similar to in the classroom, where you have gallery pieces around the room and students rotate from piece to piece to piece. Now, this is one I actually think is a little bit easier to facilitate in the online setting. When you're in the classroom, say you have 4 topics like this and students are divided into 4 groups and they're each at a poster, you have to say, okay, stop. Everyone rotate to the next poster or prompt or session.
They work at different pieces, that doesn't.
Right, because you don't want them clustered up at the posters. In the online environment, I've actually found that this actually works better because it doesn't matter if group 1 finishes and wants to rotate onto group 2. If you're using something like Google Slides, it doesn't hurt that they're both on the same topic at the same time. So this is a little bit of an efficient way to work. Online students just rotate. So we'll flip to the next slide and give you some more details. The whole purpose is for students to rotate within their small groups to explore and respond to gallery pieces. Now, your main job as the instructor is to determine what those gallery pieces are. So it could be different scenarios where they're applying some of your course content. It could be different activities they're doing. It could be, if you're teaching an art class, different images. Or even if you're not teaching an art class, just different images about the content. Pieces of content, problems, any of those kinds of things. You break up the content into different chunks or different gallery pieces. Then the students each start in a small group and they start on a different topic or a different gallery piece. They explore it and respond in whichever way you decide. It could be just a discussion post where they're each going to post responses or thoughts. And when they're done, they move on to the next piece and they rotate from piece to piece to piece. The beauty of this is each time you go to a new topic, you see the initial question and a previous group's brainstorming, and it builds and builds. The goal is to get back to your initial topic or the initial prompt that you started on, poster you started on, and you can see your initial reflection and how other groups have reflected and taken that to different ways. So in this one, Mary's just going to illustrate. She did a little illustration to kind of show you, follow group 1.
Yeah, and this is how I do things in class. I tell them first, so there's a lot of words, and they just stare at it, and then I make a pretty picture for them. So they all start out in their own zone, in their own topic, or on their own problem. In my class, it might be something like a pricing scenario. You know, different companies have different price levels, and they have to calculate what sort of decision they would make. So they start in group 1, topic 1, etc. And when they're finished, then they're going to rotate into the next topic. So now group 1 shifts to topic 2 and group 2 shifts to topic 3. So they continue the rotation till every group has touched every topic. And then once they're done, they're going to circle back around to their original topic. then they can see the insights that all the other groups had.
And the thing with this online is if every group doesn't get all the way through, it's okay. You have a little bit more flexibility. You can, maybe if they touch 2 topics or 3 topics. Thanks a lot, Mary, for putting me dancing on that slide.
Well, you dance better.
So we are going to try this as a team. In the breakout rooms, we've got an active learning strategy. And what we basically want you to do is with your team, review the active learning strategy, and then you'll go to the next slide and you're going to post how could you use that active learning strategy in your own class. So Anthony teaches communication. The way he teaches it might be really different than the way Collie in the library uses it. So we'll just be able to discuss a little bit as a group. And when you're done with that topic, we'll move on to the next. So I think we've got you in 3 different groups. Group 1, you're going to start on the yellow door.
And we said, this is kind of a lie, this slide, because we said we'd give you 15 minutes, but we have exactly 15 minutes left. So I'm going to put the timer at 10 minutes. Hopefully everybody gotten that link and everybody has their...
Can access it. Give me a thumbs up if you can access that link.
I have set up for 10 minutes. So I'm going to hit start the breakouts. And you're back. I know 10 minutes never went so fast, but I wanted to make sure that we had a couple minutes left to show you some of the resources that we have for you this week. Normally, again, we would take some time to go through your results, but you guys have access to this now, so you can look and see what other people had said.
And you can see this is a mid-stakes activity. Had some time to process the content and then think about or share the ideas.
I hate to cut off any sharing. I just want to make sure that I give everybody information. If you want to stay a couple of minutes extra, then that would be fine, but I don't want to keep anybody who can't stay past 3:30. If you have questions, if you have suggestions, other things you want to see, if you want to volunteer to present something, you can go to the suggestion box, bit.ly/capital LOL, all lowercase suggestion box. It is case sensitive. Next time, I almost said next week, but we're doing 2nd and 4th Tuesdays this semester. So in 2 weeks, we hope we'll see you again. If you want a copy of today's slides, it is bit.ly/capital LOL active learning. The active learning piece is all lowercase. Jen has just put that in the chat. And then what we plan on doing in 2 weeks is an expansion of what we did today with a couple of the more complex types of active learning sessions that are going to tend to take a little more time.
I saw in the chat somebody said something about station rotation, and you can do that as well. So we're going to do that and also Jigsaw next
That's our
week.
station rotation and
2 weeks.
Jigsaw. I know, I can't get past the we're not doing it every week. All of our previous recordings, I'm sure you've seen this slide before. And then for this semester, we have kind of a tentative schedule going of what you're going to see. So 2 weeks from today on the 23rd, we'll do part 2 with those slightly more complex activities. And then a whole bunch of resources for you guys.
Everything that we've done, we've just kind of put on back slides. So if you click on the KWL, there's a chart right there, a Google chart. The bottom one is a ticket in. On the right-hand side of the doors, if you click that, you can make your own copy of, this is just a 4-door gallery walk, just like we did today.
So it's the structure and you can put in the details.
We've also got all of the projects and some variations. So if you want a little bit more information on the naughty problem, there's some guidelines for it.
Right, other strategies.
3, 2, 1, Rosebud form, a KWL chart. This is just a Google slide if you want to have students use that, or you could make a slide deck where they're each doing that and capturing the learning.
Right,
just
so we
an
could have
example.
done this on our first activity today.
Breakout rooms, just another way to organize them or structure them if you have group roles. And then just a slide for, you can put your topic anywhere in the middle and just have them as a team create and put the group number on it. It can be that simple, and you just replicate that for however many groups you have. Some breakout room templates. Here's
This
one we
was
did.
from our adjunct night.
We've got Leslie dancing the same way Mary dances there.
Well, that's right. And we did it this way because then you knew which instructor was going to lead your session. If you have multiple instructors, or it's like a group or a club or something, and you have multiple faculty sponsors, they could each take a breakout session and the students would know based on who was in front of the door.
Or if you wanted to put the team leader, if they wanted to put their emoji on the door for whoever's leading that breakout session. These are just the icons that Mary's created for some of our activities.
Yeah, my thought was that if you tried any of these and used them repeatedly, then the students are start recognizing, oh, this is a KWL. We know we did this before. Or, oh, this is a naughty problem. I know what to do with this. So again, it kind of picks up steam and you start saving time for yourself and your students.
some doors, so you can create as many as you want, but you've got the template. Mary made those over the weekend, and I love them. I was
Yeah.
so excited Monday to say new doors.
Every one of these is its own image, so you can use whichever ones you want. I made in Word, if you can believe that. So someday if you need me to show you how to make doors in Word, I can do that. And then more like glass panel doors. And I think that's the end of that, but let's see if we still have anybody with us who has questions.
Feel free to unmute comments, ideas.
Random jokes.
Thanks, guys.
So I thought it was very helpful.
Thank you.
Good. What's the best thing? You gotta turn your cameras on. Leslie, Margie, we want to see you. Thank you, Margie. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Are you still here for questions?
Sure.
We are. Oh, good thing you got that in there. I almost closed out. Let me hit cancel on that. You.
Yes. On a breakout session, if somebody is only dialed in with a smartphone, can they see anything?
Do they have the Webex app? Because there is a Webex app. I know I can get in on my iPad to sessions.
Well,
So-
see, when you look at participants, you can tell that they're on a smartphone.
Right. Let me try right now to go through my Webex app and join this session. See what it looks like, because
The question is, can they do a breakout room?
Yeah. Well, and I'm going to test that theory.
Okay, no problem.
We'll do it in real time. Sorry, it's very weird to have two of these. Where is? Okay. Let me put my video on.
Back to the main meeting. So
There you go.